The rain was pouring down on the streets of Portland, creating puddles that reflected the glow of car headlights. Sophia, a sensitive and idealistic artist, hurried along the sidewalk, soaked and without an umbrella. Her thoughts were far away, immersed in the anticipation of her upcoming art exhibition. Ideas danced in her mind like brushstrokes on a canvas, and she barely noticed when she bumped into someone. "What are you doing?" asked Raphael, a dark-haired man with a skeptical look, stepping out of a nearby bar. He stopped, surprised, and looked at the woman who had just collided with him. The anger in his tone was evident, but there was something else in his gaze that intrigued Sophia. "Sorry, I was distracted," Sophia replied, trying to regain her composure as water dripped from her wet hair. "It wasn't my intention." Raphael frowned, crossing his arms. "Distracted? Is that an excuse to bump into someone? Don't you believe the real world is more than your art and romantic daydreams?" Sophia raised an eyebrow, the challenge in her gaze provoking a reaction in Raphael. "What's wrong with believing in love and the beauty of life?" she retorted, feeling the anger grow inside her. "What do you have against it?" "Love is an illusion," Raphael replied with a tone of mockery. "People have deceived themselves for so long, believing that there's a true connection. It's all a sham, a way to distract themselves from the realities of day-to-day life." Sophia couldn't believe what she was hearing. "So you've never been in love? Never felt this illusion you so despise?" She was getting more and more irritated, but also intrigued by the man in front of her. "Falling in love is just a way to get disillusioned," he insisted, shaking his head. "People create expectations, and in the end, they're always disappointed. Love is a sham that ends in pain." The intensity of the discussion increased, and the rain seemed to intensify the tense atmosphere between them. Sophia was determined to make Raphael understand her perspective. "You're so trapped in your negative beliefs that you can't see the beauty in human connections. Life is made of moments, and some of them are magical. Love is one of those moments." "Magical," Raphael laughed, but there was a trace of curiosity in his eyes. "And what happens when that magic fades, when reality knocks on the door?" Sophia hesitated for a moment, her words lost in a confusion of emotions. "I don't know," she finally said, her voice softer. "But I'd rather believe it's worth the risk. Love can be complicated, but it's also what makes us feel alive." Raphael's eyes glistened with a mixture of disbelief and fascination. He was about to respond, but the storm around them seemed to create a space of silence between them, as if the universe was waiting for a revelation. Without thinking, Sophia took a step forward and, in an impulse that surprised her, kissed Raphael. The kiss was unexpected and charged with electricity. She felt the tension transform into something more, something that challenged all his previous words. Raphael was paralyzed at first, but soon responded to the kiss, his lips moving at a hesitant but intense pace. The world around them disappeared, and all that existed were the two of them, caught in a moment that defied logic. When they finally pulled away, both were stunned. The rain continued to fall, but now it seemed distant. Raphael looked at Sophia, confusion written all over his face. "What was that?" he asked, his voice low, as if trying to understand the new reality that had just emerged between them. Sophia, still at a loss for words, just shook her head, unable to explain. What did that kiss mean? What would it change in their lives? The only certainty was that somehow, the rainy night in Portland had changed everything. The morning after the unexpected kiss was marked by confusion and the warmth of the previous night. Sophia woke up with her head full of thoughts, the rain still falling outside like a melancholic backdrop. She knew she needed to distance herself from Raphael, but the idea of seeing him again made her restless. The art gallery where she worked was preparing for a new exhibition, and that should be her priority. However, the image of Raphael, his skeptical look, and the kiss they shared kept invading her mind. When morning came, the dim light of the day filtered through the curtains. Sophia decided she couldn't let her emotions dominate her. With a deep sigh, she put on her artist's apron and began organizing the canvases and works that would be exhibited. She was lost in her art when suddenly the gallery doorbell rang. Her heart raced. She knew who it was. Raphael entered, bundled up in a dark coat, his hair still wet from the rain. He seemed hesitant, but there was a curious glint in his eyes. "Hi, Sophia," he said with a nervous smile. I came to see your art. What do you want, Raphael? She couldn't hide the tension in her voice. You shouldn't be here. He took a step forward, his hands in his pockets. I just want to understand what happened. Last night was unexpected for me too. Sophia crossed her arms, trying to protect herself from that intensity. Maybe we should just forget it. It was a moment, and moments don't define who we are. That's not how I see it, he replied, gathering courage. Art is about connection, isn't it? I saw that in your works. You make people feel things they often prefer to ignore. She hesitated, the sincerity in his words reaching her. Yes, but sometimes it's easier to ignore. Sometimes it's safer. Safety isn't everything, Sophia. He moved closer, his eyes fixed on hers. Tell me, what inspires you to create? What do you feel when you paint? Sophia looked at the paintings hanging on the walls, each an explosion of color and emotion. I paint what I can't express in words. Each canvas is a piece of me, a part of my story. Love, pain, beauty, it's all intertwined. Raphael seemed fascinated. And you believe love can be real, even with all its imperfections? Yes, I believe, Sophia answered, feeling more at ease. I think love is an experience that transforms us, even when it hurts us. And you? What do you feel about it? I don't know. I used to believe that love was something to be found, but now? He paused, his expression heavy with doubt. I think I'm as lost as you are. The silence that followed was filled with palpable tension. Sophia could feel the chemistry between them growing again, like a flame refusing to be extinguished. Raphael hesitated, as if struggling against an impulse, but finally stepped forward, his eyes locked on hers. Can I kiss you again? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. Sophia felt her heart race. Raphael? He didn't wait for an answer. In a gentle movement, he leaned in and captured her lips in a cautious but full of promises kiss. The emotions that had been buried began to overflow, and Sophia let herself go. The kiss deepened, and for a moment, the world around them disappeared. When they pulled away, their faces still close, the reality of the situation began to settle in. This is complicated, she murmured, still breathless. Yes, I know, Raphael replied, his hand gently caressing her face. But maybe the complication is part of what makes it all worthwhile. Sophia smiled, a mix of hope and apprehension. The connection between them was growing stronger, but the shadows of Raphael's past still hung over him. She knew they needed to face it, but at that moment, the only thing that mattered was the new flame beginning to burn between them, lighting their hearts amid the storm that still raged outside. The rain continued to fall incessantly in Portland, as Sophia and Raphael ventured through wet, gleaming streets. The sound of the droplets hitting the ground formed a symphony that accompanied the couple's hesitant steps. It was as if the weather reflected the complexity of their feelings for each other. Sophia, with a slight smile on her lips, tried to ignore the unease growing within Raphael. He seemed distant, as if a shadow followed him with every step. Do you remember the first time we met here? Sophia asked, pulling a bit of light into the moment. The rain was so heavy that I almost didn't see you approaching. I thought you were just another skeptic who didn't understand anything about love. Raphael smiled, though his gaze remained fixed on the ground. And I thought you were just another romantic lost in your world of cult of colors and illusions, he replied, in a low voice. But you surprised me, and you surprised me too, Sophia said, holding his hand and gently pulling him to stop. I didn't expect you to care about my art. Raphael looked at her, a glimmer of hesitation in his eyes. The truth is, I do care, Sophia, but that also scares me. The idea of getting involved, of getting hurt again. He hesitated, as if the words were too heavy to be spoken. Sometimes I feel like all of this is a big mistake. Sophia frowned, confused. A mistake? How can you think what we're living is a mistake? We're just starting to get to know each other better, to explore something that could be incredible. Maybe. But the doubt is always there, he replied, looking away. I'm afraid to open up, to hurt you, or to hurt myself. Love isn't all flowers and smiles. It's also pain and disillusionment. And what if it isn't? What if we can be different, she insisted. Look at us. We're here together, and this is real. We can't let the past hold us back. He sighed, his gaze still fixed on the wet sidewalk. Sometimes it feels like I'm carrying a huge weight. I don't know if I can handle it. You deserve someone who doesn't bring baggage, Sophia. The response cut like a blade, and Sophia felt a pang of sadness. And you think I'm like that? That I'll give up on you just because you have a complicated past? We all have our stories, Raphael. What matters is what we do with them. They continued walking and soon arrived at a park where the trees danced under the rain. The leaves glistened and the environment seemed magical. On a bench, an elderly couple sat, laughing and exchanging affectionate glances. The scene touched Raphael's heart and he stopped to watch. "Look at them," he said, discreetly pointing. "How many years of history, of challenges overcome, yet they're still together. How did they manage that?" Sophia smiled, observing the couple's happiness. "Maybe it's because they never gave up on each other. Love requires work, Raphael. It demands commitment and, above all, courage to face fears." "Courage," he repeated thoughtfully. "I don't know if I'm capable of that." "You're stronger than you think. We all are," Sophia said, encouraging him. "Love isn't a burden, it's a choice. And I choose you, even with your insecurities." Those words echoed in Raphael, but he was still fighting his ghosts. The fear of getting hurt again was a relentless adversary. He wanted to believe he could open up, but the scars of the past seemed always lurking. "I don't want you to get hurt because of me," he said, finally turning to her. "But I don't want you to leave either." Sophia, sensing the vulnerability in his eyes, decided it was the right time to act. "Then let's take it one step at a time. Let's explore this together. It doesn't have to be perfect, just real." Raphael hesitated, but as he looked into Sophia's eyes, he saw the sincerity and determination lighting up her face. It was an invitation to an unknown path, but one that could be filled with beauty. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, taking her hand. "Okay, one step at a time." And so, under the rain that continued to fall, they began to build a new chapter together, one they didn't yet know how it would end, but were willing to face side by side. The rain continued to fall in Portland, but now the atmosphere was no longer just stormy. It was dense, heavy, as if the sky itself reflected Sophia's inner turmoil. She was in her gallery, surrounded by canvases and brushes, but her mind was far from the vibrant colors she used to love. Raphael was avoiding her, and it left her in a state of growing restlessness. The unspoken words between them were like shadows hovering in the air, and Sophia didn't know how to dispel them. She sat on the gallery floor, surrounded by her works, trying to find solace in art. Each brushstroke she made seemed to lack the same meaning. What was once a source of joy had now become a reflection of her pain. "Why can't he just reach out to me?" she thought, as she looked at a canvas where she had portrayed a sunset, symbolizing hope and new beginnings. "If only he knew how I feel." Meanwhile, Raphael was walking the streets of Portland, his mind in a whirlwind. He couldn't understand why he had pulled away from Sophia. It was as if an invisible wall separated them, a paralyzing fear of getting hurt again. "What am I doing? I can't just leave her like this," he murmured to himself as he stepped through a puddle, thoughts of Sophia echoing in his mind. He looked up at the sky, hoping the rain would wash away his fears, but the truth was that he needed to face them. After days without seeing each other, Raphael decided he needed to try. He headed to Sophia's gallery, his heart pounding in his chest. As he entered, the soft light of the space contrasted with the storm outside, but the environment felt so empty without her presence. He saw her sitting on the floor, her eyes lost in a canvas. "Sophia?" His voice came out almost as a whisper. She lifted her head, surprised, and her gaze met his. The tension of the moment was palpable, almost electric. "Raphael," she replied, trying to hide the mix of emotions bubbling up inside her. "What are you doing here?" I needed to see you," he said, hesitant. "I realized I can't go on like this. I can't just walk away from you." The sincerity in his voice made Sophia's heart race, but part of her was still hurt. "Why didn't you fight for us before? You left me alone," she exclaimed, frustration evident. "I was scared," Raphael admitted, his eyes locked on hers. "Scared of getting hurt again, scared of hurting you. But that's no excuse. I should have been stronger." The vulnerability in his tone made Sophia hesitate. "I'm scared too, Raphael," she confessed, tears welling up in her eyes. "But I don't want our fears to separate us." Raphael took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "We can face this together, Sophia. I want to try." The sincerity in his words made Sophia feel a little more hopeful. She stood up, her emotions on the surface. But how can you promise that if you're not fully opening up to me? I feel like there's still something you're not telling me. He looked into her eyes, the struggle visible on his face. I don't know how to explain it. The truth is, I carry a weight from my past, something that haunts me, and it keeps me from fully giving myself to you. Sophia felt a knot in her throat, the desire to understand what tormented him growing. Raphael, you can trust me. I want to understand. The two stood in silence for a moment, the rain pounding hard against the windows, creating an almost hypnotic rhythm. Raphael took a deep breath, as if preparing to reveal a secret kept under lock and key. There was once a woman in my life whom I loved intensely. I thought she was the right person, but she betrayed me, and since then, I've been afraid to open my heart again. The confession made Sophia's heart tighten. I'm sorry, she murmured, feeling the pain he carried. But I'm not her. I want to be someone you can trust. Raphael looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. I know that, and that's why I'm here. I want to work on it, but I can't promise it will be easy. Sophia took a step forward, determination in her eyes. I don't expect it to be easy, but I'm willing to fight for us. I want you to be present, to allow yourself to feel. Let's face this together. Raphael smiled, a shy but hopeful smile. Then let's start now. They moved closer, and the connection between them began to flourish again, even amid the storms of the past. Love was there, pulsing, waiting to be lived fully, and for the first time in a long time, they both felt ready to embrace this new journey. The night after the exhibition had been one of silence and reflection. Sophia found herself in her studio, surrounded by brushes and canvases, but inspiration seemed distant. The smell of fresh paint in the air couldn't hide the emptiness Raphael had left behind. She looked at the blank canvas in front of her, but the image that emerged in her mind was not a work of art, but Raphael's face. The flowers he had brought were still on the table, slowly wilting, just like the hope she had in their relationship. With a deep sigh, Sophia decided she needed some time. The love that once seemed so vibrant now felt like a labyrinth of insecurities and fears. Maybe a little distance is what we need, she murmured to herself, trying to convince herself. But at the same time, part of her wished he would come back, that he would fight for her, that he would show the connection they shared was still strong enough to overcome any obstacle. Meanwhile, Raphael was walking the streets of Portland, the rain softly falling on him. With the flowers still in his hands, he reflected on his visit to the gallery. She seemed so distant, he thought, remembering the hesitant look on her face when she received the drawing he had made. I just wanted her to know how much I value her. Frustration enveloped him, as he couldn't understand why it was so difficult to open his heart, even when the desire for Sophia was overwhelming. He recalled her words during the exhibition, the way she had poured her emotions into her art. "You make me believe in love," he remembered saying. But the truth was that deep down, Raphael was fighting his own demons. He was afraid of getting hurt again, afraid that vulnerability would make him a target for pain. Determined to find clarity, he thought that perhaps it would be better to step back a bit, give them both time to reflect. After hours of walking, Raphael decided to stop at a small cafe where he used to spend afternoons sketching. He ordered a coffee and sat down at the table, looking out the window as he thought about Sophia. The image of her smiling, with her hair wet from the rain on the first night they met, still made him feel warmth in his chest. "What am I doing?" he asked himself, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. "Maybe I'm throwing away something that's worth it." Meanwhile, Sophia was back in her studio, deciding to take her art in a new direction. With a brush in hand and a palette of vibrant colors in front of her, she began working on a new canvas, a piece that reflected the confusion of feelings consuming her. Each brushstroke was an attempt to capture the essence of the relationship with Raphael, the passion, the pain, the insecurity. "I can't just ignore what we feel," she said to herself, as tears rolled down her face, "but I also can't stay trapped in fear." That night, as the clock marked bedtime, Sophia felt exhausted. The mental fatigue weighed more than any physical work she had ever done. She decided she needed rest. Tomorrow will be a new day, she thought, closing her eyes, but the image of Raphael didn't leave her in peace. The next day, Raphael woke up, determined that he needed to face his fears. He didn't want to leave Portland and leave Sophia behind, but the idea of returning and opening up to her seemed daunting. I need to be honest, he thought as he had breakfast. If I really love this woman, I can't let her go without a fight. With that thought in mind, he decided to go to the gallery once more. Meanwhile, Sophia was in the studio, listening to soft music as she worked on her new piece. The sound of the brush dragging on the canvas was almost meditative. But suddenly, the sound of the door opening made her stop. She turned around and her heart raced when she saw Raphael standing in the doorway. He looked nervous, with his hands in his pockets and a determined expression on his face. "Sophia," he began, his voice trembling, I needed to come to you." Sophia's heart raced. "We need to talk." She took a deep breath, aware that this moment could be the key to everything they were experiencing. "Yes, we do," she replied, feeling hope rekindle in her chest. The conversation that would follow could change the course of their lives forever. The rain continued to fall in Portland, bringing an air of melancholy that seemed to reflect Sophia's emotional state. Sitting at her small work table in the gallery, she watched the droplets run down the window, each one carrying a fragment of her uncertainties. The anonymous letter she had received left her uneasy. The yellowed paper revealed secrets Raphael had never shared, and the betrayal that had marked him seemed more than a distant echo. It was a shadow now hanging over her heart. "Why didn't he tell me?" Sophia murmured to herself, her mind spinning around the words written. What else was he hiding? That betrayal from someone he believed to be his soulmate seemed more like a burden than a truth to be shared. Sophia felt the need to talk to him, to understand what was really going on in his heart. But attempts to contact him were in vain. Raphael was distant, as if an ocean separated them. Determined to confront him, Sophia decided she could no longer live under the shadow of assumptions. She needed answers. With a mix of anxiety and courage, she prepared to meet him. The chosen place was the cafe where they used to meet, a place now impregnated with memories, laughs, knowing glances, and unspoken promises. As she entered, the aroma of fresh coffee enveloped her, but the familiarity didn't bring comfort. On the contrary, it heightened her unease. When Raphael entered, a silence hung between them. He looked different, his shoulders more slumped, as if the weight of his secrets was finally becoming unbearable. Sophia took a deep breath, feeling that she needed to break the ice. "Raphael, we need to talk," she said, her voice firm but with a touch of vulnerability. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a sadness that seemed ready to overflow. "I know, Sophia. I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth. I received a letter," she replied, interrupting him. "It talks about you, about what happened in your past, about the betrayal that hurt you." Raphael's eyes widened and he seemed to freeze. "You weren't supposed to read that. I was going to tell you at the right moment." "Then tell me now," Sophia pleaded, her heart racing. "Why don't you trust me? Why can't you share this?" Raphael ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with his own demons. "It's hard, Sophia. I didn't want you to see this as a burden. The betrayal left me so broken, and I thought that by not talking about it, I could protect you somehow." "Protect me or protect yourself?" She looked at him, challenging. "You know that love requires vulnerability. If we don't have that, what do we have?" He took a step forward, the tension between them palpable. "You don't understand. The woman in the letter was a childhood friend. I loved her deeply, but she betrayed me with someone I considered a brother. I was a fool to believe she was my soulmate." Sophia felt a lump form in her throat. The revelation was devastating, but also enlightening. "And you think that would repeat with me? That I would do the same?" "I don't know. That's why I pulled away. The fear of losing you paralyzed me," he confessed, his voice choked. "I didn't want you to be just another disillusionment in my life." "Raphael, I'm not her," Sophia said firmly. "I'm someone who wants to be with you, who wants to build something real, but that will only be possible if you open up to me." Silence stretched between them, but now there was a new energy in the air. Raphael moved closer, his eyes fixed on Sophia's. "I want to try. I want this to work." And in that moment, the barriers that had risen between them began to crumble. Sophia saw the vulnerability in Raphael, and it made her feel that despite all the uncertainties, love was a choice they were both willing to make. Then let's do this together, she said, a smile beginning to form on her face. Let's face the past and build a future. Raphael smiled back, and at that instant, everything seemed possible. They embraced, a gesture that symbolized not only reconciliation but a new hope. They were ready to face whatever came, together. Have you ever wondered if your own beliefs about love are preventing you from experiencing something amazing? The story we shared today is an invitation to reflect on how our perceptions can be transformed in unexpected ways. Are we so trapped in our preconceived ideas that we can't see what's right in front of us? Let the story of the kiss challenge your own convictions and make room for new possibilities in your love life. What beliefs do you need to reassess to allow something wonderful to happen? If you identified with this journey and want to keep exploring the power of small changes, take a moment and click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. This is, in my opinion, one of the best stories I've ever told. And if you enjoyed what you heard now, you'll definitely love this other story too. So subscribe to the channel, click on the video on your screen now, and see you in a few seconds.